All right, back here in Southern Arizona, another air spool install. Gonna do a quick video on exactly the components I used, cost of this project, and how it all came together. I've done quite a few of these now, and just wanted to share how they've been going and some things that I've learned. So here's our home built solar panel mount. This is three 455 watt Canadian Solar bifacials, and this is a custom pole mount that I did myself. It's just old 3.5 inch weld pipe and sleeved over the top with 4-inch weld pipe. This 3 panels is enough to run the air spool in most conditions. As you can see now, it's about 6 o'clock in the winter time, and we've run out of light. We're running on 110 volt power for the air spool right now. This is a little more in-depth look at what this mount looks like. I used Unistrut 2 10-foot sticks. I split them this way and bridged the middle with the angle iron, and that gives you enough room. K2 clips mount very well in the Unistrut. I don't use the proprietary panel mount systems. There's a ton of them out there. A lot of them use really flimsy material, and I don't like how they perform. We get real bad microbursts here in Arizona, so I like to build something heavy duty. This is concreted in the ground with about 200 pounds of concrete and a bunch of rocks with it. Right here, we transitioned from MC4 solar jacketed insulated wire with a weatherhead water seal into an IMO. I believe this is an Austrian built unit. It's better than the Chinese Amazon ones. I've not had luck with any of those. This is a poly pipe here that the customer had. This would not be to code, but it is buried fairly deep, and they wanted to save a little bit of money, and I was comfortable using this as the conduit instead of electrical conduit. We are bonded through the panels up top, and then down here we have a ground rod and a number 6 bare copper ground, and all the clips go from the aluminum panels into the Unistrut into the steel, and so we have good bonding on this system. And this is a little close-up of the adjustment here that we did, so you can articulate it depending on the season, but the angle is set. Here's the outdoor unit. I'll show you how I did this here. We just poured and formed about a 6-inch concrete slab out of Quikrete bags. Nice solid mount. I got Tapcons mounting the feet here, keep it nice and solid. I sometimes do a rubber isolator underneath, but I found that these are so quiet and balanced that's kind of unnecessary. Here's our poly pipe running up into the unit with the number 10 THHN stranded cable that transitioned at the DC disconnect out back. There's no need to run jacketed solar wire all the way to here. I just run number 10 stranded wire. Then the AC side, this comes from the breaker panel, so I have a dedicated 20 amp, obviously single phase, single pole breaker, and that runs the AC side here. Conduit runs underneath. I don't run the extension cord that comes with the kit. I don't like plugging into external outlets on the house for corrosion issues, longevity issues. Might as well just run right to the breaker. This unit's not going anywhere, and I don't want an extension cord running up on the deck here to this old nasty outlet. I did a nice line cover on this set here, and it's at an angle that obviously is not parallel to the rest of the siding. That's because the drain line runs on the inside. I've found you really have to pay attention to having nice positive drainage with the condensate lines obviously coming out of the wall, making that transition, and then coming down the side here really needs to be nice, straight, flat, and at a decent angle. You do not want any of that condensate ending up in your wall or any potential for that to happen. One thing that I could have done here is use, I believe RectorSeal makes some flexible line sets. It's a real thin wall in these trailers, so it's only about a 3-inch wall, and to make that 180-degree curve with the 3H copper was quite difficult. So in the future, I would use the 36-inch flexible line set to make that curve and then transition back to copper here. And that, I think, would have made my life a little bit easier. And if anybody needs to take down the indoor unit in the future, that would be a little bit more simple. You're probably noticing these heat vents for the propane heater that's inside this trailer. These are not going to be used anymore with this heat pump unit. So having these exhaust right next to the outdoor condensing unit is not a problem. A couple things to note about this unit and this install. This trailer is not used all the time. The customer wanted this strictly for maintenance purposes of the trailer. It gets so hot, and in the summer here we have really bad monsoons, tons of rain. They didn't want the humidity and the huge temperature swings to be continuously rotting this unit. This is basically just when somebody comes over to stay. They have a nice house. This is just the guest house, but they didn't want to trash it or tear it down. So this is a cheap alternative. All summer long, we can just run the air spool for free during the day, and with the app, we just turn it off. It cools down here nice in the desert at night. Move the video inside, got dark outside. We're standing in front of the second air spool that I installed in my personal home, along with the one that we did 2 years ago. These two units have allowed us, winter and summer, to not need to run our central AC ducted system whatsoever. That's allowed us about a savings averaging $130, $250 a month, more in the middle of monsoon season in the summer when it's extremely moist and 110 degrees outside day and night. So the return on investment for us is looking about 2.5, 3 years to pay off both of these units and the install. Couldn't ask for better on that. Hopefully they're going to keep cranking for another 10 or 15 years. And consideration for people that are doing this for the first time, a couple things I just wanted to go over. Componentry is very important. If you look at the studies coming out from solar industry right now, cheap MC4 connectors, solar insulated connectors, cheap contactors, breakers, DC disconnects, things like that. All of that Amazon garbage is really a safety concern, a true safety concern. So spend the extra $100 to $200 on your install, and that's going to save you so much headache in the future. Not only just from a diagnostic standpoint, oh, I got low power, something's weird, can't figure out what it is. Clean input power is very important. I've run into that personally. I know a lot of people that I work with have run into that. Not to mention, it is a true fire hazard. That also goes for cabling. Cheap insulation that has not been rated or tested, installation or cabling of the wrong gauge, all these sorts of things. Just because it says it is a 50 or 60 amp rated breaker or 100 amp rated switch, it has not been rigorously tested. If it costs $15 or $20, it has not been rigorously tested and is not reliable. I use Northern Arizona Wind and Solar. They're a very reputable site. They have amazing tech line. You can call them and say, these are the types of things I need. This is the project doing, this is the amperage draw, and they're gonna lay you out components, put in a nice package, send it to you. That information is invaluable, especially if you don't do this type of thing very often. One of the things I didn't go over at the install site was gonna be the cost of equipment that you may or may not have, or the cost to hire somebody to come out and draw down your system or do flares on extended line sets or things you may or may not be familiar with. There's 1,000 videos online. I am not going to go into all those right now, but the basic concept is that these systems come pre-charged. The line sets come filled with argon, but you need to evacuate those down because as soon as you pull the caps off, you're going to be exposed to the outdoor air. Then all those non-combustibles and that moisture is going to be running through your system once it's hooked up. So you don't need to buy a whole bottle of refrigerant and a scale and charge the unit, but you do need to be able to pressure test and evacuate the line set that connects the outdoor unit to the indoor unit. Again, there's 1,000 videos of this online. For me personally, I have my own vacuum equipment and gauge set. I had that from automotive work years ago. So I ended up buying a nitrogen bottle and a purge and test regulator. I tested 500 PSI for all my systems. I strongly encourage that. You can leak check with a vacuum system, but that is not the same as pressurizing at 250, 300, or 500 PSI and making absolutely sure that you're not going to lose any of that precious refrigerant down the road. So that's my personal preference. I do enough of these, and it made sense for me to invest in equipment for my own personal business and my own personal use. You might be different. One thing to note, if you do hire someone to come out and pull a vacuum on your system, leak check, and perform a systems test once it gets running, that is going to be a little difficult for somebody to wrap their head around that does this as a profession. If you get on the phone with them and say, hey, I just installed this myself, can you come out and do the tail end of this project for me? You have to understand in the trades, that's a very difficult thing to do. They're not going to want to warranty their work if you did all the front end work and you may or may not know what you're doing, or they don't know if you know what you're doing. So just be wary of that. Understand that there is naturally going to be a little bit of abrasion there between you and a tech. Hopefully you got a nice local company that's willing to work with you, or possibly you got a local company that can do the whole thing for you if you're not comfortable doing it with yourself. So these are simple to install, but there's still a ton of things to know. If you're not an HVAC technician and you don't need to wrap your head around superheat and subcooling and pressure temperature charts, you still need to understand the basics and be comfortable with what you're doing. So I encourage you to just get enough of an education to know what you don't know. The next consideration kind of goes along with the planning step here, is really think about the placement of where the indoor and outdoor units on this are going to go. I'm not an HVAC engineer, wish I was, but seems like most people go with the least intrusive route. It's easy to be on an outdoor wall, but you can buy condensate pumps, mount the unit on the roof, place the unit on an interior wall. If you have a great room or something that doesn't line up with an outdoor wall, spend a lot of time and really think about that. You can go quite a long ways with these line sets, and it's pretty flexible, but think about, especially for the first one that you put in, where you spend most of the time in your house. Seems like the bedroom, obviously people want, the most comfort there, but that really might not be the best choice if your kitchen gets really hot from cooking like ours does, or we spend most of the time in the living room here, and in the desert it cools off at night and we sleep fine in our room. So there's a million different options, but really try to plan that out and think about airflow through the house in just a real rudimentary sense of what you're going to be able to control and manipulate yourself with just having one mini split unit, because it's far different from a ducted system where we're used to the whole house being a nice even temperature in every room, when the reality is that's wasting a whole lot of energy cooling and or heating these rooms that you don't hardly spend any time in. So do a little bit of your own social engineering, civil engineering on you and your family to decide what's the best place to put a single one of these units. For us, it ended up being 2 units and covered the whole house. I think that's about all I got for this video. I hope that install was helpful for you to see. I'll try to do a couple more of those. I got several installs coming up. I have already installed one of the 18,000 BT units from Airspool, and I'm getting ready to install another one on a large casita, a guest ranch house. And I think that's finally kind of getting traction with people. If you can actually bring them to your house and show them, look, I can unplug it from the wall or turn off the breaker and still running quiet, cool air into your home, it's pretty amazing. And finally, then when people feel it, when they see it, that's when they get sold on the idea of it. I think solar is a little complicated for some people, and it's got a bad rap, and it's kind of gotten convoluted with all the tax incentives and salesmen knocking on the door and all these sorts of things. But this is something tangible. You can hold it in your hand, very simple, very straightforward, and you can take the responsibility for you and your family to live efficiently. So hope you get out there and do it, and I'll try to be as helpful as I can. Thanks.